So, raised out in Magna. Single mom of 4 that raised us. My dad passed away when I was 9 years old. I mean, it was never like we were in poverty or anything like that. My mom is my hero. She always made sure we had food on our table, clothes on our back, we didn't want for anything that way. But there were certain things that just weren't an option for me when I was younger, like sports and things like that. Oftentimes she had to say no. And then by the time she was saying yes, I felt like all the other kids were so much further ahead than me. And so I had my own, kind of internal stuff there too. In that, I think that I ended up finding my own extracurricular activities, and many of them weren't good. Some of them weren't legal, so got in a lot of trouble as a kid from a young age. Started, getting into drinking alcohol heavily and those types of things. And I just didn't really have a clear direction, and all I had learned growing up in Magna and being around working class folks is you go out there and you work hard, get a job, you hope for a future. And unfortunately, I saw that path wasn't working for most people. Many of the people that, that were my seniors and, people that I looked up to, some of them had committed themselves to working for the rest of their life in a job that they didn't enjoy. It's one thing to be working and active for your whole life. It's another thing to be doing something that you dislike. And I didn't want to end up in that position. I was also a little bit of a dreamer. So I was always kind of looking at, success and how it could be achieved and thinking about the lifestyles that other people had. And what I noticed was families that had the lifestyle that I wanted always had something to do with real estate, whether it was the dad was a builder or they owned rental properties. The people that had extras always had real estate. At a very young age, I realize that now, made the decision that I was going to be a real estate investor. And we're talking, 17 years old. I'm starting to get the books and, go to the seminars and things that would come into town. I'm trying to figure out okay, if real estate is where wealth is created and where wealth is held, then how do I get into it? And at that time, I didn't want to be an agent. Being an agent wasn't really, I didn't see it as the same thing. In fact, I saw it as the opposite, where, many of the agents that I knew didn't have the extra freedoms. And that was the big thing for me, was freedom. I wanted freedom in my life. I started going to the seminars and spending money. And out of high school, I was working, while I was going to high school, I was loading trucks for UPS basically. So I was just a grunt worker, and I got really good at it, honestly. I went from the point when I started where I was, they had me helping somebody else load a truck to by the end of it, I had 3 different trucks that I was loading at any one time. So I was jumping in between and getting things done. But they limited me on how many hours I could have. So that worked while I was in high school. But when I graduated high school, I went to an alternative school. So that's the only way that I graduated, first of all. When I was done, I had a buddy that was working in a steel fabrication shop. And he's like, hey, I can get you, a couple more bucks an hour plus full time. And I was like, I'm on, let's do it, and it was hard work. I started out in the paint field, sandblasting these huge plates of steel bigger than this room, and I'm on this sandblaster that could literally take your face off if you let it go. In the winter is when I started, and so it was cold, it was miserable, it was hard work. And there was a lot of promises made when I was working there of if you learn these skills, then we'll give you these, different positions and you'll make more money. But oftentimes I would spend the weeks or months or, however long it was to learn this new skill and take on this new position. And then raises were on hold. It was kind of a volatile situation with the company where there would be some times where it was like, hey, we need you here 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're all out. We got to get this. And then you get the job done and it's like, oh, we got to cut back. We need some people to volunteer to go 32 hours a week. They also had me on rotating shifts with that, which is day shift to night shift back again. And there was always a disagreement of how long that should be. So sometimes it was a week, sometimes it was 2 weeks, sometimes it was a month, which really kind of limited my ability to have much of a social life.
Why did you do that?
18 to 22. Yeah, Rocky Mountain Fabrication out in Davis County. Yeah, I knew I wanted out of that, and I was still going to the seminars. I mean, I was spending my 30-minute break, or my 30-minute lunches and my 15-minute breaks. Oftentimes, I was going to my car to listen to, the late night TV program that I'd bought that was going to teach me how to buy properties, no money down and those things. Yeah. Spending that kind of money, spending that kind of time, but not having any success. And it was really scary, in the beginning when I was young. I didn't have anybody that I could go to, right? Oftentimes when I'd start trying to call, realtors and things on, different projects, they're like, oh, what you're doing is illegal. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to jail. Well, I wasn't doing anything that was illegal. I didn't probably use the proper terms. And I was, asking questions that it's like, well, and yeah, we'll get into that too, of the mentality that I feel like has to change in the real estate market. But overall, I finally connected with a group that had local mentors, and they had people that were, doing it. It was called Nouveau Riche back in the day. I mean, immediately, all of a sudden, I was plugged into this network of people that were actually investing in real estate. So at 22 years old, so I got into the investing side of real estate, and I loved it. But of course, there was ups and downs. So this was 2005 when I first started. First of all, I had a hard time adapting from, shifting from from a W-2 employee where somebody tells you what to do to being an entrepreneur, right? I quit my job way too early thinking, I'm just gonna, tear this thing up and be on top of the world. And so I had some really hard times in the beginning. And then I started getting some traction. I actually met my current business partner way back then, and we started working together. We started getting some traction, but then the market fell out, right? So 2007, the market just completely crashed as we were getting some traction going. And again, just a whirlwind. Limited transactions. It was harder. It was, difficult to fight through. We were also battling this, $3 million in real estate, which when, at the peak had $1 million in equity. We were in this great position. But when the market turned around, the opposite. So we're fighting to try to hold on and get things refinanced and get into a good debt position, and ultimately, lost that battle and lost majority of those properties in the process. But luckily I was connected to a group of people who were problem solvers and, creative, and, they were still out there transacting. And so we adapted with the market. We went back to doing, wholesale transactions and working with people who were in foreclosure and doing short sales and subject to transactions, things like that. So I had the opportunity to help people out of a lot of tough spots during, that recession, even while I was in really tough spots. So fought through, and Nouveau Riche had kind of went away, but one of the owners, Bob Snyder, launched Renatus. And Renatus is another educational company. I had seen his character throughout everything, and when it all went down versus others who I would never do business with again, he was somebody that I wanted to follow. And so I helped him in launching Renatus and being there as one of the key people in the beginning. So we started doing real estate, transactions more. Things started picked up, so we were doing more consistently there. But then also Renatus paid me to enroll, students into their education. Ultimately, I got to the point where I was able to make 6 figures in investing and 6 figures promoting the education. Things went well there. I also had the ups and downs with that though. And I was doing, for a lot of years, I was flipping properties, whether it was single family homes, commercial real estate, land. Like we did a lot of different types of transactions. I was in this position where my income was all over the place. So it was like I would go from $100,000 in a month to, nothing for long periods of time. And, these ups and downs, and, you have big chunks of, $10,000 or $20,000. And so trying to manage through that, and it was really, difficult. And so it was like constantly feast or famine. And I took a look back at some point, a few years back, when I just took a look back and said, if I would have just held on to the properties that we had owned over the years and found a way to, lease them out and get income coming in from them, my net worth would be, Sure. So that's where I decided I've got to make a shift to where my concentration is on long-term buy and hold properties. And as I was making that transition, I also had kind of the same question come up over and over in different ways of who do you want to serve? What problems do you want to solve? Who's your ideal client? And I really thought through it of dealing with a traditional apartment tenant, somebody that is, has excuses of why they can't pay their bills, but at the same time, they're going on vacation the same month, like those types of things. Those aren't the problems that I enjoy solving, like trying to figure out and talk people into paying for their obligations. But what I do get excited about is entrepreneurs. I always have. I can't do anything without thinking about the business behind the business, right? Like I go to a theme park and I'm just thinking about like, okay, well, so if, this works this way and this is how this, adds to the revenue and the bottom line, and I study it and talk through it with people. And as investors, that's the only way we get paid is by solving problems. I decided I wanted to own commercial real estate. And when I say commercial, specifically commercial tenants, so business tenants. And so that's what we've been focused on for the last little while. We're mostly doing smaller projects right now, but I've got a restaurant out in Grantsville. So been getting into commercial real estate. And, throughout all of that, of course, I've also, spoke on stages and done different speaking engagements. And so even just within my little circle, I've spoken all across the country. I've even went into other countries and spoke to smaller groups, I've been on the radio, many times. I've been on the TV. I actually even created a little TV show that was on Channel 19 here locally. It was called Keys to Real Estate. So I had a guy that had a connection with the local studio and basically said, we can produce this show and put it on there. We only ended up doing the pilot episode, but that pilot episode was replayed like over and over and over again. So depending on how you count it, like 100 or more, television appearances of like where people would have seen me on TV. Like when I decided to become a real estate agent, I did see an opportunity to make money, obviously, but it was also more so of, I felt like there was changes that needed to happen in the industry. And I felt bad for some of my friends that were in real estate. Their livelihood was essentially being attacked by all these discount companies and things. And it was because of a mindset, and it was a mindset that I actually had as well. All my years as an investor, I looked at agents as they're just another agent, right? Like nobody's gonna do anything different. And I can't tell you how many, calls I got off of properties, my own properties that I had listed, that the agents would, pitch me on, let me come show you my marketing plan, and then they all had the same thing. And so it was like, if I'm gonna get the same service regardless, I might as well pay as little as possible. And it wasn't until I met Jay, the broker here, his assistant reached out to me and said, hey, your property would be great for our TV show that we're doing, that I ever had somebody that really did something drastically different and went above and beyond. And then in the midst of that too, some of those transactions that we had, list with him didn't go well. Like they didn't sell well, and we were in a tough spot. And Jay always made sure to take care of us and not hold hard to, well, you're gonna pay me no matter what type of a deal. So I knew his character, and I also saw that he had tools that other agents weren't using. And so when I decided to become an agent, I thought I was gonna have to do all that from scratch. Like I thought I was gonna have to, hire the video crew and figure out social media and like do all these things. And then when Jay reached out to me and said, hey, I'm opening up a brokerage now, because he was kind of a one-man show for a long time. The TV, it was his little niche, but he opened it up and reached out to me. And essentially I had everything that I was trying to create handed to me on a silver platter at no cost, and way better than I could have hoped to create in any decent amount of time. And so jumped on board, and really that's kind of my focus and I've had a great first, 11 months in the business. Like we've done amazing, we've had great success. My clients are happy because I was the guy buying and selling. And because of that, I have all that experience. I mean, of, dozens and dozens of my own properties, but also because I was helping other people learn investing, I was privy to the decisions of hundreds of transactions, right? And seeing like which way things would go and how negotiations work, what would push people over the edge to getting a deal done versus not getting the deal done. So I brought all of that experience with me essentially into being an agent. So when somebody works with me and as an agent, they have all that experience behind them. And then also all the tools of the brokerage, where we have ABC4 on, behind us and, feature every listing. But then there's me with all my experience of agents not doing much for me, of like, why am I not on KSL? Why am I not on, all these different websites that, yes, they might have gotten me onto hundreds of websites because those websites automatically pull from the MLS data and whatnot. But were they doing those extra things that has to be hand typed? I wanted to be that guy that was. I wanted to get those properties into every nook and cranny so that we could get all the different types of buyers. And that way, if you have different types of buyers competing for the same property, you're more likely to get multiple offers, and you're more likely to be able to negotiate those offers, into a better position. That's what I strive for. Like that's my whole MO, is helping people get the best possible offer for their property. And then on the buying side, which has really just been a side note, I don't really focus on the buyer's side because I'm a buyer myself. When somebody's looking for somewhere that they're going to live, and potentially spend their life in and raise their kids and create memories, they're looking for something very different. And so I can do that, but I'm more going to be the best asset of how can we, make an offer that is going to hopefully get you the property and also put you in the best position financially. So I've done that a little bit on the in addition to it. And every property that I've helped somebody buy, we've bought it below market, even in this crazy market that's been going. People say you can't buy for, even market price. You can if you're looking for the right opportunity.